Peter? Peter?
Hey, George.
All right.
Okay, we're live on YouTube.
We are live on YouTube. So let's okay. All right.
Okay, buddy.
So we've got welcome to the Gaggle, and we are here live streaming. So if it's Saturday evening, well, evening for us, but early in the day, lunchtime for others. So it means that it is time for live streaming of the Gaggle. And so welcome all, welcome to our friends, Nigel Baird, very good to see you. D. Sule, good to see you. So how are you, Peter?
Very, very well. Winter is here. We had snow last night. It dissipated during the day, but that's only the beginning.
Okay. All right. I mean, there are a couple of interesting things that have taken place in the last 24 hours. I mean, one of them is this rather interesting interview that President Putin gave to Russia One. Again, he was mostly talking about the migrant crisis on the Poland-Belarus border, and he said something that I haven't heard anyone else say. He said that Lukashenko had told him that none of the migrants were coming in via Belavia. I think that's the national airline of Belarus, Belavia. He said none of them were coming via Belavia, and they were getting into Belarus because Belarus had signed some kind of visa-free agreements with the originating countries, which seems very strange. I mean, where are they coming from? Whether it's Iraq or one of the Gulf states, I don't know. But he signed some kind of a visa-free agreement. In other words, you can enter Belarus without a visa, which certainly is odd. Putin didn't say that he necessarily subscribed to this. He said that's what Lukashenko told me, and so that's what he said.
That would essentially mean a transit visa, where you get it.
Right, I guess so. So he said that. Yeah, that's right. It's a kind of a transit visa, but they're coming. That these are chartered flights. That they're chartered flights from the originating countries. They're coming into Belarus, and then they're just simply heading for the border, which I guess they're entitled to do. So he's not saying that Lukashenko is deliberately getting. I mean, he seems to be getting some money. I mean, there must be some money in it for Lukashenko that if through this transiting process. Nonetheless, it's an interesting issue that hasn't come up before. And of course, the other thing that he has mentioned and Lavrov has mentioned is that why are these migrants being treated more inhumanely than other migrants? And in other words, migrants are coming into Europe through other routes. For instance, the Mediterranean, they're coming to Italy, and they're treated more humanely. So why this, they're just letting them basically freeze in the winter. And again, even the migrants that are trying to cross the English Channel are usually treated far more humanely. They're just simply dumped and allowed. So is there some kind of a bias against Russia and Belarus that they're saying, oh, the hell with them, we can't be bothered? I don't know, there was a lot of interesting points that I haven't heard elsewhere. Anyway, what do you think, Peter?
Well, it's certainly a problem, and it's not going to go away. I mean, George and I talked about this extensively yesterday, if you want to check out that video. It's just that the EU just doesn't have any of the high cards in this game, okay? And until they recognize and sit down and talk to Lukashenko, this is going to continue on, okay? And this is part of his gambit. Let's be fair. Let's be honest, okay? You want this resolved? You got to talk to me. You don't want to talk to me? It's not going to be resolved. It's as simple as that, okay? And essentially, too, this is just kind of a very arrogant position from the EU. No, you have to follow our rules. You have to do what we say. And the Belarus, we're not part of the European Union. So
right. No,
who are you?
Yeah,
who are you?
That's exactly right. But now the EU is for the first time talking about building walls, which they've never spoken about before. That doesn't mean it's going to happen. But this guy, the president of the European Council, Charles Michel, has now talked about, well, maybe we will finance a wall. Of course, nonetheless, they seem to be really now in a state of panic about this. And well, they're not prepared to talk to Lukashenko, and are now talking about these sanctions. They're talking about sanctioning third-party airlines. So it's really so this is now the only remedy that they're thinking about. Well, maybe we'll build a wall, but of course the problem with building a wall is that that's going to take a bit of time. That doesn't really address what are you going to do in this particular crisis, because a wall's not going to be ready. You need to start building today. Not going to be ready for at least another 12 months.
Well, it shows you that, I mean, come on, folks. I mean, this has been going on since 2015 on a large scale. It's been going on longer than that, but on a large scale since 2015. And the European Union is still defaulting back on ideology instead of reality. Okay, and reality in this case is a very, very cold reality, like literally a cold reality. And again, the European Union doesn't have a collective understanding of how they want to proceed. I mean, you can traipse through Greece, I guess. Okay, I mean, literally just all through it. Okay, so I mean, this is also an intra-European Union issue that needs to be resolved. And the last thing you need to do is call Putin, because he's going to say, "Why are you calling me?" Okay.
Yeah, no, that's exactly. So he says, in this interview again, he said that this has nothing whatever to do with us. And of course, there is no evidence of this, because they can't even say, oh, they've come via Russia to Belarus. They're not going through Russia. In fact, Russia doesn't have these kinds of visa-free agreements. So no one gets into Russia without a visa. So there's just no way you can get anywhere with Belarus.
Well, if you get into Russia without a visa, you get a quick exit from Russia.
That was very funny. There were these news reports that Lukashenko was threatening to cut gas off from Europe, and then Putin was asked about this. Well, what's your take on this? Well, I don't think that's going to be very helpful. I haven't heard anything about this, but I'll have a word with Lukashenko about this.
I read an article about that today, and I was just astounded. No, he doesn't play Lukashenko's not going to play the energy card, because it's too interconnected with Russia's exports here. Absolutely. You want to piss off the Russians, start screwing around with the energy supply, particularly this winter here. No, this is fanciful. It was actually a very weird article, because it was basically saying Lukashenko can be benevolent if he wants to be, or he can be malevolent. He can go against the Europe. I don't see that's in play right now. Basically, what Belarus is saying, why are you sanctioning us? We can resolve this through negotiation and dialogue. Okay, I don't think we have to extrapolate it out to energy politics. Like I said, the Russians would not be.
Oh, of course they couldn't. What I was just wondering is that, did Lukashenko actually say this, or is this just a misinterpretation on the part of journalists?
He's not. As we're speaking right now, I have not seen one word attributed to Lukashenko on this issue.
Yeah, I don't believe, because whatever else you can say about Lukashenko, he's certainly not a stupid man. And that would be the height of stupidity to start talking about cutting off gas supplies for Europe, particularly, and Putin brought this up, with the Ukraine, what Ukraine did with the gas, and how they were siphoning off gas. And this is something Russia really doesn't want to go down that path again. So I didn't.
They built the Nord Stream. That's why they built the Nord Stream.
That's exactly, yeah. This is ridiculous. But again, it's surprisingly, Putin said that. Well, yeah, I talked to Merkel a couple of times this week, and I'm sure she and Lukashenko are going to have a conversation very soon. I'm pretty optimistic that she's going to get on the phone to him and resolve this.
Isn't that amazing? That one of her last acts as chancellor, she's got to talk to Lukashenko about Yeah, EU's illusory border. Okay.
Right, exactly.
What a finale! What a finale!
You mentioned yesterday, and I have to say, I missed that news story that Merkel had said that she thought she handled the 2015 well. I missed that story, and I saw it yesterday after our conversation. So that's just amazing. Amazing.
Well, I mean,
her
Biden,
absolute incompetence to make such an assertion.
well, the evacuation from Kabul was smooth as silk. It was fine.
Right. I
mean, people play games with themselves. Okay, I mean,
right. Yeah.
If it went so well, why was there Brexit?
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
You had Brexit. Plus, you have the whole populist movement in Europe, of which, the much detested Orban is the leader, because now everyone has taken the lead from Orban and saying, we don't want any, zero, none. I mean, we don't, no migrants at all. So she said, oh, well, we're going to distribute the migrants among among all the EU countries. And no, we're not taking any. That's our quota, zero.
I mean, what kind of union is this?
Right.
Okay. Just ship. I mean, it's kind of like the Biden administration, just landing people in the middle of an airfield in the middle of the night, go. Okay, fine. You go talk to the governor.
Right. But that's an interesting thing, because if when they had Ron DeSantis was interviewed, I can't remember, was it Tucker Carlson or was it Hannity, and Tucker asked him, can the government do that? Can they just simply ship off migrants to your state without your having any say in the matter? He seemed to say, yeah, I think they can.
Yes, they can. Because of the airports are nationalized.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, because of the FAA. Yeah, that's right. So it is kind of extraordinary. I mean, you can do it in the United States. It is a federation. You can't really do it in the EU. I mean, there are people who would love to do it, and they were absolutely outraged when Orban said absolutely no, none, zero. And now others have followed Orban's lead. Yeah, no, we're not taking any. So you can't do it in the EU at the moment unless they kick Orban out. But yeah, you can do it in the United States. And it's a really shocking, a very, very cynical maneuver, because they are dumping them in red states. I mean, they know exactly what they're doing. You dump them in Texas, you dump them in Florida. This is, the heart of the Republican majority. I mean, if the Republicans lose Florida and Texas, they can, kiss the White House goodbye forever.
That's right. Well, and that, of course, is the plan.
Right, exactly.
It's very, very simple. Okay, it's called replacement. That's what it is.
That's it. Yeah, and done in the night, in the middle of the night, gives it a rather more sinister quality.
It's really interesting, this whole discourse about replacement. There's a long record of Democrats saying this is exactly what we need to do, and we're going to do it. And then when Tucker Carlson or a conservative says this is replacement, that's racism. How can you say that? It's so mystifying to me. I mean, the Democrats quite openly say this is our path forward, but if a conservative says it's racist.
Right. It's very funny. You're absolutely right. It reminds me a little bit of the whole issue of dual loyalty when it comes to Israel. How dare you accuse me of dual loyalty? How dare you? Just because I'm a Jew, you claim that I have a loyalty to Israel. And then the moment somebody criticizes Israel, you are anti-Semitic. You are criticizing Israel because you hate the Jews. Well, which is it? I mean, if Israel is a separate state, then surely we can criticize a separate state. You're not criticizing a Jew just by criticizing Israel. So it's a kind of the same thing. Hey, how dare you criticize Israel? That means you're anti-Semitic. But at the same time, how dare you accuse me of dual loyalty?
Because of these laws. What is it? It's the boycott. What is it?
What's it? It's the divestment boycott. Is it DBA?
Yeah,
DBA. Yeah, yes. Divestment boycott. Something. Yeah.
But, so you can't criticize Israel, but you can criticize your own government, but you can't criticize a foreign government.
That's right. Anyway, we have a super chat from our good friend Detroit Rock City. Thank you, Detroit. Always nice to have you here with us. And his question is, why is the US being so provocative in the Black Sea? What do you think?
Well, that's a good question, isn't it? What was it? Was it Congressman Banks? That was it?
No, the one was on there the other night. What was his name? Turner, I think, Congressman Turner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have to protect the Black Sea. I mean, how many thousands of miles is the Black Sea from the United States, George? I mean,
right.
Why are they? I'm mystified by that. Okay.
Very, very mystified. Yeah, exactly.
What they're doing is this is a more brinksmanship here. I tend to think that there are those around Biden that think that they can find a foreign policy win here. Because they want to get Afghanistan in the rearview mirror. Domestically, they are on their knees. I mean, a presidency can be hobbled for a few months because of one issue, and it can be resolved. This administration is hobbled on all fronts. On all fronts, George and I have seen a lot of presidents come and go, but we've never seen anything like this of this magnitude so quickly. Right. And so you're going to get those dim light bulbs like Sullivan and Blinken that think that they can force something in Belarus, as we've talked earlier, and importantly in Ukraine, and entrusting, believing in Zelensky. When George and I have talked about this Yarosh character, rabid and Russophobe, a neo-Nazi, he's been brought in recently into the power structures of the military. He only wants one thing: war. He wants to kill people, okay? Right. And he's being accepted, acknowledged, and legitimized by the Biden administration. So it's a real toxic mix here. Right. And I don't think either side at the end of the day really wants war, but the way you're putting this all together, the possibility of a conflict is enhanced, and we live in a very dangerous situation right now.
Well, I think that's right. I think that, yeah. The thing is also that you kind of wonder when you have a weak leadership in the White House and generally in administration, the military have pretty much a free reign to do what they want. So I just wonder whether, to what extent, anyone at the top of the administration is actually watching this. I mean, I think that the military are just making their own decisions. They just simply, well, we don't like. They're very anti-Russian. They're really ideological. This military. And they're just simply doing this whole thing. I mean, they're kind of sailing into the Black Sea and provoking the Russians by themselves. I mean, I don't think they're following any instructions from the State Department and the White House. I mean, look at what Milley did. I mean, again, even under Trump, it was a kind of a weak leadership. The military just felt that they don't even need to consult the president. They can just simply pursue their own foreign policy. So, you kind of wonder. Remember that time again last spring when they had made that decision that we're going to sail these 2 warships into the Black Sea, and then they suddenly pulled back, and that was clearly, that decision to pull back came from the top of the administration. They suddenly panicked. So it sounds like that was probably, the military made that decision, and they were just going to go ahead with it. So, I mean, these people are really, really belligerent. I mean, I think that they don't want a war, but they kind of want the fruits of war. And that's always the dangerous thing. That, I mean, nobody really wants a war ever, but they want the fruits of war, which is that you threaten and intimidate someone, and then you can hail this as a great victory.
What's in play here is a form of brinksmanship, okay? You're right. Nobody wants a war, but this constant probing, constant prodding, right, and then you throw in the lot of Zelensky and his circle that want to force a conflict because they've got our back. Well, there's no guarantee they have your back. Okay, that's the first mistake here. Right. But with the combination of the Black Sea, we must have American troops in Ukraine, training, arms. It's a cumulative effect. Creates a very dangerous thing because, George, in this case of brinkmanship, it's not, in a sense, it's a hard brinkmanship because the Russians have already made it very clear. You do this and we will react. Right. Now, it's up to you what you're going to do. We can't control you on that side of the border, but there's a certain cascade of events here that if you are reckless, you're going to force our hand, and we will do it. And I think it was last spring, we had many videos on this. I'm going to paraphrase here, but the Russian foreign ministry said if there's a conflict here, Ukraine will potentially turn into a failed state. This is very important words, everybody, and they're not messing around. They're not going to say, "Oh, all righty, that's all right. Okay, we give up." No, that's not going to happen. Okay,
it's not going to happen.
And these people in the Donbass, most of them have a Russian passport.
Well, that's the thing, and that's why, and that's what it goes back to, because when Russia says, "Look, if you try to resolve this by force, if you try to use force against these people, we will respond." But Russia's doing something no different from what India did in Pakistan in 1971, when at the time it was called West Pakistan, sent in forces into what was East Pakistan, but they happened to be Bengalis. And there's a enormous Bengali population in India. India gave warning that if you try to use force against Bengalis in East Pakistan, we will intervene. And India did indeed intervene, and that was the end of the state of East Pakistan, became Bangladesh. Turkey did the same thing with the Turkish Cypriots. In other words, at the moment they felt their countrymen or their fellow nationals are under threat, they say we will intervene. That's all Russia's doing. Basically, if you try to use force against these people, they are Russian nationals, we will respond with force. I don't think they haven't been ambiguous about this. I mean, they've been absolutely clear.
Well, I'm pretty sure, George, I don't think it's an exaggeration. They've gamed this out over and over and over again. They take it very, very seriously. Right. And the biggest losers, everybody, will be Ukraine. At the end of the day. They will lose. Okay, politically, diplomatically, yes, Russia will take a major blow. Okay, but they're saying it's worth it to us. They're telegraphing this on a daily basis, and you still have this going on.
Right. No, that's absolutely right. And they made this position very clear. They made it clear. They said that they made that clear to Poroshenko, because it was the Poroshenko who first attempted to use force. They made it clear to Zelensky, who also tried thinking about resolving it by force, that they will not tolerate the use of force to resolve it. You can't say that they haven't made their position clear. If you make your position clear, then why go on down this path? And then the whole thing about the Black Sea. Look, Russia is a Black Sea power. The United States is not a Black Sea power. France is not a Black Sea power. The United Kingdom is not a Black Sea power. Why do they keep pretending that they have Black Sea powers? We're defending Ukraine, defending Bulgaria and Romania. First, Bulgaria and Romania do not need defending. No one's threatening them. But Russia is a Black Sea power. That's not going to change. And
when was the last time there was gunboat diplomacy? I mean, over 100 years ago. So Russians are going to send a ship off the Bulgarian coast and say, surrender. What world are they living in?
Exactly. And given, after all, when Russia essentially went to and reincorporated Crimea into Russia, that was in direct response to the coup in Kiev, because at that moment they felt this intensely Russophobic junta, their first act will be to try to kick us out from Crimea. Crimea is our access to the Black Sea. And therefore to the Mediterranean. It is an existential matter for us. That's why they moved as quickly as they did. That this is a serious matter. I mean, the whole idea, well, they should have waited. They couldn't wait. I mean, there was just simply, this was
George, it. How many casualties were there? Oh, that's right. Zero.
Exactly.
I think there was one friendly fire on the Ukrainian side. Right. Okay. Right. There was no military takeover. Right. As a matter of fact, the dumbasses over at CNN, because I remember I was in an international hotel, and it's I don't visit airports very often, so I never see CNN. And they're saying, Russia has invaded 25,000 military personnel into Crimea. And it's like, they've been there since 1991. Right. I mean, when was the invasion? Okay. Right. Again, this is the kind of Western reporting you got. And on top of it, there were referenda before the final referendum to leave Ukraine. They were never recognized, obviously, by the government in Kiev. I think there were 2 or even 3.
I think, yeah, something like that, exactly. And because each time, and I think that a couple of times, they said they were going to hold a referendum, and then Kiev immediately threatened the use of force if they tried to hold a referendum. So they didn't hold it because they just threatened force, and Russia was so weak that they didn't really respond properly. But the point was that in this case as well, had they held a referendum without the Russian intervention, Kiev would have used force. I mean, they would have without question.
They were already saying they would use
force. Yeah, absolutely.
They were already killing people in the Donbass.
Right, exactly. There's no question. They would, they said they would absolutely use force against the Crimea. So Russia said, "No, we know, we're going to have a referendum. You cannot stop this referendum by the threat of force." So what's the Western position? The Western position is, well, apparently you have to stay where you are, irrespective of the wishes of the people, for all eternity, because Nikita Khrushchev assigned Crimea to Ukraine. Well, if you're going to hold that position, then why exactly did you recognize the breakup of Yugoslavia? Those were secessions. Why did you rush to recognize the secession of Kosovo?
After
what's the basis of any of this position?
After that mythical referendum that no one ever heard about.
No one ever heard about, exactly. No referendum here. So it's so fraudulent. I mean, these Western sort of rule-based order, you don't follow any rules. I mean, you just sort of make them up as you go along.
I can remember so clearly. I was in an RT studio when there was the forced partial Western recognition of Kosovo, and I was speaking the same day with a Russian foreign ministry official, and he said they will truly regret doing this because they set the precedent.
They set the precedent. Exactly, and a few months later, Russia recognized the independence of South Ossetia and Abkhazia, and immediately invoked the Kosovo precedent. Just as they said, they predicted beforehand that you go down this path, we will use this as a precedent. No, sui generis, unique. Kosovo's a unique case. No, absolutely unique. No parallels at all. Well, unique. Hey, a few months later.
Well, at least South Ossetia and Abkhazia are real nationalities, historical nationalities that have had different forms of legal definition, okay, particularly under the Soviet Union. Kosovo had none of that, okay?
No, not at all. So, anyway, we have a super chat from a good friend of ours, Kevin Dorr. He says, thanks for the great analysis. Do you think Biden will triple down on COVID mandates because he knows the media would really, sorry, it's moved, so I better get back to it. Because he knows the media really want to carry water on that issue. Well, I mean, I think he's going to do that, but now he's had a couple of defeats in the Fifth Circuit. I mean, it doesn't mean that,
But he's going to ignore them.
He's going to ignore them, exactly. But I think if there's going to be more and more of these defeats, it's going to be hard to ignore them. But I agree with you, Peter. I mean, I think it's going to, for the time being, he's going to ignore them, just as he's ignored the stay in Mexico policy, which the Biden administration was ordered to do. So, but yeah, the media's been gung ho for every kind of restriction through COVID. So yeah, absolutely, they've got Biden's back.
I don't think it even really matters what Joe Biden thinks about anything. This administration is going to double down because what they do is they say they want to bring unity, but because they're in such a hapless mess right now, they have to double down, triple down, quadruple down, and they need to divide. They want to divide as much as possible because they want their minions in the media to carry water for them, and they want these ideologically possessed lefties to go complete berserk. I mean, these people are their foot soldiers, okay? They're the ones who they go nuts about this. So this is going to end very, very badly. What the Biden administration needs to do is do a reassessment. Look, everybody, George and I were on a podcast. I don't want to name names here. It doesn't matter. But, when the presenter came out, firing because of Donald Trump, 500,000 people are dead. Remember that, And then, okay, so, all right, here we are, November 13th, 2021, and more people have died under Biden of COVID than under Donald Trump. George and I say that Biden is responsible for those deaths? I'm not going to say that. Right. George isn't going to say that.
It's stupid. I mean, that's a stupid thing to say. That's right. So, no, I think so. But the thing about is that first, the media clearly have Biden's back. And the media, of course, have loved COVID, well, partly for the political reasons that this was a useful tool to use against Trump. But they love it because they love the restrictions. I mean, they've always loved the idea of government restricting what people can do or say or think. So they've been all along. Hey, more restrictions, please. And if there are going to be additional restrictions imposed in this winter, because there probably will be a spike in the cases, the media will be clapping their hands. Great, we need more. Too little.
And what they've done, erroneously, but in a very disgraceful manner, they've equated people that are against mandates as Trump people, which is not true. Okay,
Trump is not. Trump is the one who gave us the vaccines. He's not against the vaccines. It's
so more complex than that. But they like the really simple thing. And plus, my recent favorite mantra is, George will smile as I say it, is that the administration and the media, they love to punch down, and it gives them such pleasure to punch.
Well, that's the interesting thing. Punch down, but also punching the moral reprobate. So you get the satisfaction of hitting someone in the face, which people get certainly a pleasure from. But hitting some bad guy, it's like I'm punching Hitler. Yeah, that's great. Oh, take that and this. So that they get a pleasure because if you look at who's the most hesitant about the vaccines, well, it's actually the blacks. But that you cannot do that. You can't start punching, blacks. That's just a no-no. You're cast out of respectable society if you do that. So they ignore that and they pretend that it's the Trump base that is against vaccines. But of course, as we just said, Trump has been very supportive of vaccines, as have always all of the Republican governors. I mean, I can't think of any Republican politician who hasn't supported the vaccine. They are opposed to the mandate, and the mandate, and they have hesitations about if you've already had COVID, why do you need the vaccine? I think that's Senator Ron Johnson. I think that's the point he's saying, that hey, I already have it, so what's the vaccine going to do for me? But that's the point. I mean, so they want to think that these awful rubes, with their "Make America Great" hats, they're the enemy. They're the ones who are against the vaccines.
And then I came across this report. It's only like 3% of the population that that are against these mandates. Well, yeah, they're the truck drivers and the nurses and people doing logistics. Okay, yeah, you can punch down at this 3%, but they're the ones that run the economy. And all you talking heads, you don't do jack squat. You haven't made anything. You have nothing to offer outside of platitudes and bumper stickers. Okay. Again, punching down the people that make it work, okay? The people that don't look for fame, that aren't on Twitter, they're not on Facebook, they just go to work, they want to get a decent wage, and they're being punched down upon by these people here. Right. This is the state of play, folks.
That's right. So we got a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you, Jonathan. Says, it drives me up a wall to see Republicans fearmonger about Iranian militias in Syria when they supported Al-Qaeda terrorists who mass slaughtered Christians. Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's nothing more infuriating than that. And you had this hysteria about Iran, terrorism from Iran, when we have known for generations that the source of terror is
Please.
not Shia. It is exactly, it's the Sunni extremists, that the financing of the Sunni terrorism comes from Saudi Arabia. You know, they finance it, all the madrasas and all the, you know, all these horrible jihadis, all were financed by Saudi Arabia. And you know, and it goes back to the war against the Soviets in Afghanistan. And Iran has been fighting against Al Qaeda, and he's fighting against it in Syria and fighting against it in Iraq. I mean, so I mean, you know, I mean, you had Trump, well, I did this and this and this against ISIS. You know, I killed Baghdadi. Yeah, but you know, Baghdadi wouldn't be in goddamn Idlib. You know, if you'd allowed you know, Iran and Damascus to sort Idlib out, there wouldn't be any damn Baghdadi.
There was no ISIS in Iraq or Syria until the illegal invasion of Iraq. Okay,
Right.
And you know, as much as it bothers some people, Soleimani was kryptonite to these Sunni terrorists. He killed more of them than anybody else. Okay,
Right.
and so that was a cardinal error. He was the at the forefront of fighting ISIS and all of the other 31 flavors of jihadism. Okay, and the previous administration takes credit for it. What a total catastrophe. Okay.
Right. Yeah, no, you know, that's exactly right. And it's what the Republicans have taken this over. They have essentially adopted Israel's obsession with Iran, but that's Israel's obsession. You know, if Israel wants to be obsessed with Iran, let Israel be obsessed with Iran. But there's no reason for the United States to be obsessed with Iran. I mean, again, you know, if you're going to do geopolitics, then you know you want to have, you know, competing powers in the Middle East. And you know, and Iran on the issue of terrorism, Iran has been a stalwart ally. It does insist on its sovereignty, and it didn't like the Shah of Iran, who was imposed by the United States and the British on Iran. He was a terrible ruler, and you know the regime ended in debacle in 1978. But you know, they don't want Pahlavi. They don't want him back. And the Americans kind of think back, oh, if only we could get it back to those good old days. It's not coming back.
And you're right, George. Israel's obsession is Israel's obsession. Okay. And if necessary, we'll go it alone. Go ahead. Your state will be completely destroyed, along with the entire region. Okay. Right. Nobody will win that conflict, okay? Because one thing that Western policymakers have never understood or refused to understand is that what the leaders of Iran want to maintain is the revolution. They want to maintain the Islamic Republic of Iran. That, and they will do anything in their power to maintain that. Okay,
right.
So I mean, Israel's obsession always has to be exported. I mean, when I see these Congress people talk about it, they have no idea what they're talking about. They're just getting a couple of talking points and a bumper sticker, and they go with it. You know, listen to Sandy Cortez talk about the Palestine-Israel conflict. Wow, that's the caliber of intellect that these people have.
What is known as gibberish. You know, if you want to know what a definition of gibberish, you know, just listen to an interview with AOC talking about the Palestine-Israel issue. What was it? But I can't. Is it macro and micro?
Awful. It's hard to remember.
Yeah, I think it's something about macro and micro or something like that. Yeah.
I couldn't do it. I mean, that's a superior form of intelligence in a way, to talk gibberish that long.
Yes. Yeah.
And on top, she was speaking to, and apparently a Middle East expert. Okay. Right. And so this guy basically wets his pants in embarrassment, but he doesn't, because, well, she could be a potential ally. So he's looking like some blundering idiot listening to all this babble. I mean, it's an embarrassment for everybody around.
Right, that's right. And Herman Montoya, our friend, hi Herman, says, politicians don't care about actual Christians being slaughtered in the Middle East while bragging about Christianity in the Western world. They care about the apartheid state of Israel. This is absolutely right. There's so much fraudulence about, they say, oh, Christianity this, but the fact is, that when it comes to the Middle East, when it comes to Russia, the West has taken the side of Islamic fanatics against Christians. This was the case very much in Yugoslavia, where they took the side of the Bosnian Muslims against the Christian Serbs. It's the case in Syria, which is the Syrian government, which is all of the minorities, particularly the Christian minorities, look to the government for help and protection. But again, the West took the side of the most fanatical, the cutthroats. As you know, Peter, they did the same thing in Russia when they supported the worst cutthroat Islamists in Russia. This is a consistent policy that the West has pursued. And when may I say, Hitler pursued exactly the same policy. I mean, that was always the same policy. He backed the Islamists because they thought against the Christians, even though he was supposed to be defending Western civilization. But political opportunism said, hey, these are real vicious people, and we can rely on them in Yugoslavia. We can rely on them in the Soviet Union.
Caucasus, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. So that's right.
The mythology about American foreign policy, particularly in the Middle East, I mean, it's legendary. I mean, it is legendary. And what is it garnered, George? Except for arms contracts, negative returns. Right. Negative returns. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a super chat from another friend of ours, Spectre in the Air, and he says, he or she, I don't know, anything AO says is gibberish. Yeah, I think that's a fair characterization. I mean,
but look at, objectively speaking, she's a PR event, okay, and for all of the derision, Mama Bear, Pelosi versus AOC, that's more part of a media gambit, everybody. It's all a game, because when push comes to shove, she votes present, doesn't she? Okay, or when she knows 14 Republicans are going to vote with the Democrats, I object. Okay. I mean, if this isn't just theater, I mean, it's so obvious. Okay. And she's attractive. She's very savvy with social media. I mean, she does all those videos and all of that. She speaks nonsense, but she has some kind of reassurance for people that that don't want to think very deep. They don't want to think. They want to feel, okay? And she's good at it. She's very good at it.
I agree. I wonder, though, whether she really does have a big political future ahead of her, because I actually see her more as a media phenomenon than a serious political figure. I mean, I know people talk, she'll be a presidential candidate, maybe not 2024, but 2028. I don't see it, to be honest. I think that there's just too much gibberish. She's too lightweight, really, to be a serious candidate. I do see her as making some move to the media, having her own TV show, making a lot of money, serious money. Once she gets her own TV show, I think that's where she'll end up.
I think she's in a bit in the safest of safe districts, okay? So, I mean, she doesn't have to exert herself, okay? That's a no sweat district for her, okay? You can probably keep it forever, okay? And I think you're absolutely right. And this is the trajectory with politicians right now. You do your time, you do a couple of terms, and then you go and get your own show. And I think that even she would probably bypass television and go directly into streaming. And I think she could do very well with that. Kind of a Substack, but streaming, okay? Because she's good at it, okay? I mean, she's been around enough. She doesn't have any hard core beliefs, okay? I mean, like with the what was it, with the moratorium on paying rents and mortgages and stuff like that. What about the other people? Well, we're working on it. Turn up the music, everybody. Let's dance. Okay.
Right.
Time again. She obviously is not someone that has much intellectual power, but she has a lot of other appeals, okay? I mean, she got a nice looking butt when she was wearing that dress, okay?
Well, that's it. But, if you look at, let's say, MSNBC, I mean, Maddow seems to be, I don't know whether she's really leaving or whether she's just going to cut back on her shows. I would have thought there's a slot there for somebody who is has a star power. And look, you make a lot of money there. And she looks at me like someone who likes money. She wears very nice clothes. Those look like expensive clothes that she buys. I think she has a very nice apartment. I think she even has 2 apartments. So she looks at me like someone who likes the good things in life. You know, she's not an ascetic. I mean, there are some Democrats who are real ascetics. You know, they don't care that much about money. She looks to me like someone who kind of enjoys all the good things of life.
If I could digress for a second here, my little story has a meaning, so give me some rope here, okay? The first day that Lyndon Johnson when he was elected a congressman, the first day he went to Washington, D.C., he went to the Capitol, and you know what he did for the entire day, Jordan? I'm not trying to gross you out or anything. He hung out in the men's room the whole day. And so guys would come in, they'd wash their hands. Hey, I'm Lyndon Johnson. Nice to meet you. And so he met all of Congress, okay? Right. Because that's the way Johnson was, okay? He was methodical. He learned who was the drinker, who liked the girls, who had their hand in the till, okay? I will leave it at that. Okay, what is AOC doing? Is she making friends? No. She's just her. Yeah. She is the event. Right. Why am I saying that? She's not building a coalition. No. And that's what you need to do. You need to go through the ranks. There are very small exceptions. Newt Gingrich was one of them where he catapulted himself to the top. But usually you have to build friendships, okay? Right. And it takes time. She doesn't have the intellect and she doesn't have the patience. And you're right. She's more concerned with her wardrobe.
That's right.
Because if you really are worried about the environment, Sandy, why don't you completely defund the military?
Right. Okay? No, that's right. Yeah, it is a kind of an extraordinary phenomenon, but not unusual. I mean, there have been, in my lifetime, I know political careers where an attractive young woman, she's the talk of the town, or the media hype and everything, and then they kind of fade out, because for a variety of reasons. I think she's heading down that path. I think because she's just not doing the donkey work that somebody who's taking a political career seriously would be doing. She's just it's like she's not coming up with legislative proposals. She's not not showing herself as a doer committee person asking probing questions. She just she's
the first week is that we're going to sign in laws. Well, it doesn't work that way. The president and having no concept whatsoever of how government works here. No, it's kind of cute. Yeah.
That's right. And Spectre in the air, sort of another super chat. Thank you very much, Spectre. Money can't buy love, but it sure helps. Yeah, it's very true.
Amen, brother. Remember the great philosopher Bob Dylan said, "Money doesn't talk; it screams."
That's it. Yeah. So the other thing that happened during the last 24 hours is, of course, the indictment.
You remembered the second thing. Okay, good.
Exactly. The second thing, which is the indictment of Steve Bannon, which I find that, quite extraordinary. Of course, Bannon, it's like, he loves this kind of thing. He's now really a national figure. I mean, but to me, it just sounds quite ridiculous where they're going with this, because this is going to be tied up in the courts. He has an affirmative defense. He's going to show up when they
Monday.
Monday for his arraignment. And he's going to have an affirmative defense. He said, this executive privilege. The former president told me not to divulge confidential conversations. That's it. I mean, that's what I do. I don't understand. I mean, a Congress is a legislative body. I don't know how they can just go around pretending to be kind of an executive arm in which you have to show up, as if, and they can enforce subpoenas. It just makes absolutely no sense.
Well, it seemed to me this is an amazing milestone for a reason that completely different. I'm going to surprise everyone here, but Clint Eastwood officially has been dethroned. Okay, because Steve Bannon is going to say, "Make my day." This is godsend for him.
Right.
I mean, he's popping the bottles right now. They went for it. They're going great. Okay, because he will play with them like a rubber band around his index finger. Okay, because Congress it has no teeth to do this. The last time they did it was 40 years ago.
40 years ago, exactly. And it was unsuccessful as well. They didn't succeed. So, yeah.
It tells you they're grasping at straws, okay? They're going after, they're going after a media personality. That's one thing. They're going after a media personality that will chew them up into little pieces, okay?
Right,
and
right.
do it with glee.
Right.
This is the last guy you want to do this to,
right.
okay?
But it's also interesting that this January the 6th committee, I mean, what exactly is it doing? I mean, you know, they've had, I think all they've had is this one hearing when they had all those people blubbering, all those Capitol police officers blubbering, but they haven't actually done anything. I mean, all they're doing is they're issuing these subpoenas and then going to the Justice Department. Oh, please do something about it. But I haven't heard any hearings or anything. I mean, it's the whole thing exactly. It's just simply another PR stunt by the Democrats.
Or, you know, we could be surprised. Maybe it's just therapy. They're there for therapy purposes.
Okay? Yes.
Let's have a good cry right now.
That's
okay,
it.
It's all cry. Okay,
That's it. Yeah.
Or have a primal scream. Okay, you know, again, it's all PR. Look, George. Inflation, the border, supply chains. Only CNN and MSNBC and Nancy are up at night thinking about this. The country's going to hell in a handbasket.
That's right.
Headline, January 6th. Okay.
That's right. And that's very interesting what you just said there, because today there was a big, long article in the New York Times. Let me just find this. The thrust of it was that here it is. It's the headline is "Menace Enters the Republican Mainstream." And the subhead, "Threats of violence have become commonplace among a significant part of the party as historians and those who study democracy warn of a dark shift in American politics." So this article is completely worthless, of course. But what's interesting about this is that
it'd be true about the Democratic Party.
Well, exactly. There is no mention of any of the violence that took place last year. No mention of any of the threats of the Democrats. Or the that was by the woman Maxine Waters. Getting in their face. Accost them in restaurants and so on. Or Eric Holder, when they go low, we kick them. And you can cite one after another. And of course, they're talking here about Republican apologia for violence. Well, you remember that fat guy, the New York fat guy, he was the waddling guy. I don't know. Jerry. Yeah, Jerry Nadler. Yeah, that's right. He said when he was asked about Antifa, you're going to condemn the violence from Antifa. Oh, that's a myth. It's a myth. And then Biden said Antifa is just an idea. So you have all of this apologia. But this article just focused, those Republicans of violence and Trump, January the 6th, Trump. And what was interesting about this is only last week, after the national debacle for the Democrats, the strategy was, okay, stop talking about Trump. We need to focus on the bread and butter issue, right? Everybody talk only about bread and butter. Well, that lasted all of 72 hours.
It's like an alcoholic. I'm done with it. I'm not drinking anymore. Then 2 hours later,
exactly.
I got to think about it.
I can't do it. Give me that vodka bottle.
They can't help themselves.
Right.
They can't help themselves because they what they've done is it's like they've put they have these lenses. Okay, and they've affixed it in front of their face and they've just fused it into their head. They can't take these lenses off anymore. You see everything through equity, racism, white rage. You know what this is? And George and I are going to start using it on a regular basis. And I hope you and all of us watching this here will always equate George and I with the following phrase: wake supremacy, woke supremacy. This is what it is. It's woke supremacy. Okay, and that's all they see. And you know what? They can go on and on and on. And what woke supremacy does, it gives you permission to allow reality to leave the field. You don't have to deal with reality.
That's right. So, and David Niskanen also given a super chat. Thank you very much, David. It says confession through projection. Yeah, I think that's right. It's absolutely right. I mean, it was so galling. I mean, the whole idea. This is a very long article, and there's no mention at all of the violence of 2020, people getting killed. No mention of that, no mention of the Democratic threat. It's all, and then went back in time to, you remember those things when the Trump rallies in 2015, when he said something like, I wish I could punch him in the face, or something like that, always kind of brought up about Trump. But that's 6 years ago. So that, they go back to that, but somehow, 2020 is just a lacuna, nothing much happened that year. But that's it. I mean, that New York Times cannot go without January the 6th. I mean, it really is. It is an alcoholic thing. I mean, hey, what are we going to talk about tomorrow? Hey, God, we've got an empty front page. No news today. I mean, well, maybe we'll do something about Putin. All right, we'll do Putin. But no, we have January the 6th. They have no idea of anything else.
I don't want to be trite or anything. But you know what, this is particularly to Americans right now. You know what most Americans are thinking about right now is probably the most important family holiday of the year. It's called Thanksgiving. That's what they're thinking about. Do you think the New York Times and the Washington Post even care about what people are thinking? See, this is all of this projection. They are telling us what's important to them, but they have no interest in the problems affecting other people.
That's
like for gas prices, for example. These people probably get chauffeured or call an Uber.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean,
that's right.
There's so many issues like that it has no real close meaning to them. It's just an idea. The rest of us have to live with this as an everyday reality.
No, that's a very good point. That these things are matters that are important to them. That's it. This is what to the New York Times. What matters to them is Trump. They can't get Trump out of their mind. I mean, he really does just occupy their brains completely. So that's why, they said, okay, that's it. Bread and butter issue. Everybody, bread and butter. Okay, I need another shot of Trump. I mean, they can't talk about bread and butter issue because they're not interested in bread and butter issue.
You always go back to Dr. Strangelove. Remember, can we survive? Can we survive a first strike? And then Dr. Strangelove is in the wheelchair and he stands up and he can't help but say "Mein Führer" and his arm suddenly goes up. This is it. This is how the left thinks. They can't get it out of their system. It's part of their DNA.
That's it. That's
right. A great film. Everybody's got to see that film. Okay.
Yes, that's it. At one point, he says something like, when the president asks him a question, he says, "Oh, that isn't really necessary, mein Führer. I mean, Mr. President." He doesn't even realize. I mean, Mr. President.
And the deadpan look of everybody. Peter Sellers did such a great role, many roles in that film.
Yeah, that's right. He's brilliant. And so we have a super chat from David March. Thank you very much, David. It says, worst president since Ford. For me, it's W. All the problems we now have stem from the war on terror. I mean, I think it's a good point to say about that George W. Bush was there's a good competition is that he was one of the worst presidents ever. I think Obama would be hot in that competition. And Biden looks like he's going to take the title. I mean, of the worst president. I mean, he's so far ahead that he could well pick up the trophy at the end of the season.
It's The Onion did a story. This is almost like maybe 10 years ago. It was absolutely hilarious. It was a skit. And So they have a news reporter, a program host saying, and he's talking to what we're told is the the Chinese foreign minister. And so he said, Mr. Foreign Minister, it's been reported by the United Nations that China is the biggest polluter in the world. And he said, yes, China number one. Yes, China number one. Okay. And so Biden, he's only best at being worst. That's what's happening.
So another super chat from our friend Spectre in the air. Thanks very much, Spectre. Says New York City and elites live in their bubble. Also, Dems can't run on their governance. They need a bad guy to rail against, and MAGA. Absolutely right. Predictions 2022 and 2024. Well, I mean, I think 2022, I think it's looking like it's going to be a big win for the Republicans. Of course, we've often said a week is a long time in politics, and don't put it past the Republicans to bungle things. Going down some rabbit hole like let's go to war with Putin or some nonsense like that. You never can tell. But I think it's looking now like this is going to be a big win for the Republicans. I think the disgust with Biden seems to be really national. I mean, we talk about Virginia, but this was national. I mean, you can, whatever you can say, okay, there are specific issues that were in Virginia, but there were no specific issues in New Jersey. And it was a debacle in New Jersey. No special issues in Seattle. I mean, it was a national rejection just a year later of Biden. So I think that I don't see the situation for Biden improving at any point during the past year. So that's my prediction would be a big Republican win. And I think Trump will run again in 2024. What happens then? Who will be up against? I mean, that's another question.
One of the interesting things for me is that everybody wants to know the dynamic of what's going on in the White House. Not to be uncharitable, but I mean, Joe is at the very, very least struggling. We can just say that, all right? But George, what about the other people in the administration? Because I think we've talked about this before. Where you'll say, well, I mean, it's the Biden. I'm not Biden. It's the Biden administration.
That's right.
I mean, so if it's a success, then everyone will say, yes, we're part of a victory. But if it's a bastard, well, it's a bastard. I mean, I was just Secretary of State. I mean, I wasn't running the country. I mean, if you look at the low caliber people that Blinken is surrounded with, they are all writing their CVs. This is a CV line, okay? A lot of them are very, very long. Look at Jake Sullivan. Does he even shave? Okay, so I mean, this is a CV line for him, okay? And then when it all crashes and burns, they go into think tankistan, and hang out for the next one, okay? And then they reemerge, okay?
No,
so I just don't see that there's a whole lot of loyalty. I mean, like Pete Buttigieg is like, well, whatever. We're going to talk about racist bridges, okay? I mean,
I think that's a very good point, because in fact, nobody really stays in government really more than a couple of years. So it's not like you're planning on staying for a while, because that used to be the norm. I mean, if you go back to say the Kennedy Johnson administrations, I mean, McNamara stayed through till about 1967. I mean, Bundy, I think, left in about 65, 66. Dean Rusk, I think he stayed right through to the end.
Okay.
So that thing is just gone. Now you basically do your couple of years here, as you said. You punch your ticket. It's something to put in your CV, and then you do you put your job application, maybe in a think tank, maybe some media slot somewhere, like an MSNBC contributor, maybe a cushy academic position, visiting professor at John F. Kennedy School of Government, and then you're waiting for the next time around. There's also maybe a calculation that, okay, we lose in the midterms, but presidents have also recovered from midterm debacles. I mean, Bill Clinton recovered after 1994. Barack Obama recovered after 1996. I don't think after 2010. Yeah, he recovered for the 2012 election. But I don't think those analogies work in the case of Biden. I mean, Biden, he's just going to be 2 years older. I mean, he's already looks terrible now. Imagine what he's going to be like in 2 years. I don't see great recovery for Biden.
Well, actually, Biden has said the quiet part out loud. I mean, he just sees himself as a bridge, a transition to the Pete Buttigieg's and people like that. Okay,
Right.
I don't think he think that about Kamala
Right.
Harris anymore, because
Right.
nobody does. Okay,
Right.
but yeah, I just don't see. I don't see any real oomph to protect this administration. And you know, the spokespeople that come out for him, I guess Jen Psaki's still recovering. I hope she recovers. You know, their answers are just boilerplate. I mean, they you know, I mean, it's almost insulting, their answers to the press, and they're almost always softball. And then the way they treat Fox News. Okay,
Right.
I mean,
Right.
that's entertainment for me to see how
Right.
inane they can possibly be.
Right. No, I think it's that's right. You know, I mean, I think that there is going to be, if they are facing in the presidential election, if they are facing a complete debacle, then I think they're going to see if they can arrange some kind of a change of power. I mean, we talked the other day about this possibility, which wasn't mine. I heard this somewhere, that, you know, Kamala Harris takes over from Blinken as Secretary of State. Biden appoints Michelle Obama as number 2, and then Biden steps aside. Michelle Obama becomes president. And that's a plausible scenario. In other words, they go into 2024 with somebody, a new figure. I don't think Michelle Obama is going to be a great selling point. I think she antagonized a lot of people. But I can see how the Democrats might be thinking that they could somehow work something out along those lines.
You in the past have mentioned John Kerry, and I still think that's in play. Okay, yeah. I definitely do, because he's cogent. He's an idiot, but he's cogent. Yeah. And he's a stalwart. I mean, people, he's a known quantity. Okay, right. I can't think of any other Democrat. Schumer's too old. Nobody likes him. Pelosi's too old. Nobody likes her. No. And George and I have reflected upon this on the Gaggle so many times. I mean, you have these 2 or 3, 4 people on the top. Does anybody know the rest of them?
No.
They just don't.
It's a very good point. Exactly. You think of, if you look, you got Schumer, and then you've got that wormy guy who's the number 2 in the Senate. You know, he's from Illinois, Dick Durbin. That's right. You know, nobody's idea of an appealing.
He's got about as much charisma as a cereal box.
Right, and then from then on, it's hard to think of. You know, well,
AOC.
Exactly. And then next level is AOC. It's very hard to think about, because at least with the Republicans, you've got the half a dozen kind of firebrands.
Fox people.
Yeah, the Fox people. Exactly. You know, all the Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz. Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think at least you can name them, but with the Democrats, it's, you know, it's hard to name them. I mean, it's like, well, you know, where, I mean, you know, back in the day, I mean, you still had people like, let's say, Fritz Hollings. Now, Fritz Hollings, senator from South Carolina, he was always kind of on the fringes. I think he ran once for the presidency. He was always thought of as a potential presidential candidate. You know, you had others. You had Scoop Jackson. You had Sam Nunn. You know,
and Rayburn.
Yeah, right.
Look, George is proving the point. We can remember from decades ago more names than people that are currently in play.
Yeah, it is very interesting. Because if somebody said, "Okay, quick, who's the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee? Who's the chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee?" You'd have to sit down and really think about this.
Tucker had what, Turner? You said his name was
Turner. Yeah.
I didn't know he was head of that committee.
Yeah, I didn't know either. Yeah. I you know, the only time I've ever come across this Turner guy, I think during the impeachment, he was I think on one of those, the impeachment committee on. During the first impeachment, he was on you know, that impeachment committee, and he was, you know, he was a very loyal Trump man. But other than who are these people? So
and then anyway, you have like the Lindsey Grahams that just like free agent. Okay,
that's right. Exactly.
And Ted Cruz and
right, exactly. I mean, Ted, that's an interesting case, because Ted Cruz, exactly, he's got presidential aspirations. But no, he has absolutely no hope of anything. First of all, you know, he has an unappealing personality. Also, no one trusts him. he's just, no one really believes anything he says. I mean, it's like
oil salesman.
Exactly. So, again, Mr. Conservative, nobody really believes that he is Mr. Conservative. Boy, he's really going to fight for you. Anyway, here's a nice personal question for you, Peter, from Jonathan. How old are your dogs? And when did you get them?
Okay, I mean, look here. 4, 3, 2. 4, 3, 2. That was the ages. I got them all here in Moscow. I had a little Chihuahua named Jack, and he was hit by a car, and I was so heartbroken. It was very difficult for me. And there was what they call a zoo magazine here, a pet shop, and there was a dachshund there, and I would go by and see that this black dachshund was there week after week, and he actually spent his entire puppyhood in a cage. And when Jack died, as kind of to soothe me, I thought, I would say it was basically a rescue. I mean, even though it was a pet shop, and that's Robbie to this day, and he's forever grateful that I got him out of that cage.
Right. Yeah. It's it is hard, to see these. To see the animals in cages, because it's just, I don't know, it's painful. In the day, they just have to spend all day in the cages. And the other unfortunate thing is, I always feel, is that when the dogs or the cats aren't so young and they're in these cages, it's like people come in, oh, I want a puppy or I want a kitten, and then the older ones, no one wants the older dogs, and you kind of feel.
I did that. Yeah. Also, a few years ago, I took a rescue toy terrier. He was 8 years old. The vet explained to me that he was maltreated by the original owner. He had a lot of psychological problems. So I took care of him for his late retirement, as I called it, and he passed away. But I mean, he had a good ending, but there are no bad dogs. There are bad people.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. I mean, I guess dogs being run over is a I mean, it's a kind of permanent hazard. I mean, dogs kind of run out into the traffic. They're like that.
In my case, it was a parking lot. It was snowing. I opened the door. He bolted out, and it was an elderly man driving way too fast in a parking lot. He had, Coke bottle glasses. He had no idea that he ran over my dog. The only good thing is about this whole tragic story, it was quick.
Yeah. Did you do anything about it? You didn't sue?
What am I going to do? Beat up a pensioner?
Yeah, no, that's very hard to do. So they're still young. I mean, so 4, 3, and 2, and yeah. So that's good. That's very good.
And with dachshunds, for those that own dachshunds, my dogs love people, but they don't like other dogs.
I think I asked you once as to why you preferred the small dogs rather than the big dogs, and what's your reason?
I think that if I had a house, I have an apartment. Mm-hmm. If I had a house, I would have many big dogs. Right. I just think, with these small dogs, they can still run around my place here, burn off a little bit, have an alpha moment or something like that. Right. But larger dogs, you need to give them a lot of space to exercise, to walk, to run. And it'd be like a little cage. And that's why I love big dogs. Right. I love all dogs. I'm a real dog fanatic. People have asked me, if you didn't do politics, what would you do? I said, I have a dog podcast. That's exactly what I would do.
Right. It's a very interesting, I mean, as a segue into politics, that horrible man, you remember him, Richard Holbrooke, one of those evil men who had the high positions. Yeah. And he was kind of boasting about how when the United States backed Croatia in the wars in Yugoslavia, he said, well, we needed a junkyard dog, and Croatia was our junkyard dog. Well, I always thought that was an insult to junkyard dogs. I mean, junkyard dogs do a particular service. They're there to protect property. Keep out. If you keep out of the property, the junkyard dog will leave you alone. Croatia didn't leave others alone. I mean, Croatia invaded Bosnia and threw out a large part of its population.
The cleansing.
Yeah. So, it's very unfair to junkyard dogs.
Well, since we're on it, George and I talk. I don't know if it was part of one of our podcasts, or we just said it privately one-to-one. But this whole issue of it's a dog whistle, it's a Trump dog whistle. Well, if you think about it calmly, what are those people that use the term dog whistle are calling all of us dogs?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Again, they're elitism. Okay, we're dogs.
Right.
And we need to be. We need a leash, okay?
Right.
Or we need to be put down.
Right. But the strange thing also is that, again, as with the junkyard dog analogy, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, the point about a dog whistle is that it's at a frequency that no one else can hear but the dog. I mean, that was it. A dog whistle means only the dog can hear it. But the point about these dog whistles, everybody can hear it. Well, in that case, it's not a dog whistle. I mean, because everybody can say. In fact, these people, the MSNBC people, they seem to be able to hear it a lot better than the dogs.
The amount of projection, I mean, it's just extraordinary. And I don't know about you, George, but I come across clips of this insanity only on other news media, because I don't watch it. I could not stomach watching that. And everyone, when the left always talks about microaggressions and triggering people, George and we feel aggression all of the time. We're pretty well balanced people. I learned how to take it. All I do is fight back, okay? But I don't get offended and go hide in my refrigerator, okay?
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And that's what many Black Americans have said. I mean, Thomas Sowell says this. I mean, Sowell grew up actually in the I mean, he's very old now, so he actually grew up in a segregated. I think it was in Washington D.C. They grew up, and he went to.
He was in New York, Harlem. He was in.
Was he in New York? Okay,
New York.
So he was in New York, but he said that he went to the segregated schools. I mean, that was still before the Brown versus Board of Education decision. So he actually did attend the segregated school. He actually says that it wasn't that bad. That, that the education he got was actually pretty good in this all-black school. But
what was the percentage of people that graduated?
Right,
it was high.
Right, yeah. And so he says, and again, he got by. I mean, and I think it's true. I'm sure that's the case with Robert Woodson as well. All these microaggressions. I mean, they overcame it. I mean, you have to overcome, many things in life. I mean, life is cruel. People are cruel.
What we need to do, all of us that are fighting back, just realize an ideology is that demands oppression, demands victimhood, and the people that propagate it, it's very small. It's a very specific group of people. It's rich, white liberals. They're the problem. Right. They're the problem, okay? Because essentially, is what what's his name? Woodson.
Robert Woodson.
His message is, just leave us alone. We don't need your help. Leave us alone. Stop helping us.
That's it. So there's a question here from Mary Kate Golden, apropos of what you were talking about.
Hey, Mary.
It says, the law has changed in Russia. Animal welfare, as that dogs in pet shops is now illegal. Is that right?
Mary, I can't say for sure, but I haven't seen a dog in a pet shop for a long time. So you may be ahead of this more ahead of this than I am. Okay. I can't tell because when COVID started, they stopped selling animal. I mean, you can just buy dog food and stuff like that. But I'll try to find out for you. Okay.
And we have another super chat from our friend Spectre in the Air. So thank you very much, Spectre, for your great generosity. It says, media, tech, political elites all suck and hate the common man. Agreed. How can we change the situation and fight back? So
watch the Gaggle.
Yeah, exactly. And it says he says we have a sweetheart yellow lab, Sally. Yeah, I like labs.
I love labs. Okay, and keep them away from Fauci.
Quite so. So what do you think? How do we fight back? I guess through the Gaggle. I mean, what else?
One way to fight back is don't participate. Okay.
Yeah.
don't get yourself tied up into a pretzel with these people, because that's what they want to do. They want you to feel that way. I don't. Okay, water off the back of a duck. Okay,
Right.
you know, these things are important to them. Why is your value system being pushed upon me? I don't understand your values. I find them abhorrent, and they alienate me. You don't want what you're doing is pushing me away. I was just talking to a good friend that I hadn't talked to for 29 years, right before this, and we both agreed. He said, you know, we were more on the left 30 years ago, but the left left us. Okay.
Right. I think it's a very interesting thing about the hatred for the common man. It's something that started a while ago. I think it started in the 1960s with the New Left, and in a way, it was a response to the failure of the old left. I mean, the old left failed in Europe, in the United States. They didn't come to power because
but they did. And they became part of the club. That's why they gave up.
Right. But I think that there were great hopes that the communists would come to power, not just in the Soviet Union. It didn't happen. So what do? I mean, they basically turned their rage against the working man. The working man was so bloody stupid, and he didn't vote for the communists. And I think that was really the origins of the left. It was first really articulated, with Herbert Marcuse, with his whole one-dimensional man, repressive tolerance. And you remember how he wrote about the hoi polloi, how he feels this disgust with the hoi polloi, because he basically believed that, people had just been brainwashed by capitalism and were unable to see their own self-interest. And I think what we have now is just a derivative of this new left that emerged then in the 1960s.
Everybody knows George Orwell because of 1984 and Animal Farm, but he actually wrote on many, many other things. He was a very insightful person. I'm trying to remember the book that he wrote, but it was, the old left as it matured. I mean, I'm looking at like New Deal, the social welfare system that was brought into the UK after the Second World War, is that the left, they had more venom for the working people than they did for the rich, okay? Because these working people, they want to become part of the capitalist system, okay? And what Orwell understood, and it's very interesting. He said because of the way capitalism developed, and capitalism has an amazing capacity to evolve up until about the last decade or so, is that the highest wish of the working class is not to rule as the working class, but to get out of the working class. And this is what we had so many. That's why it's a success, because these people made it in academia. They made it in entertainment. They became politicians. And once they made it to a certain point, they wanted to. And it's like a lot of Republicans, they like to talk the talk, but when you get into the fact that people go,
but that's the point. I mean, if you look at what ordinary people want, I mean, ordinary people want a better life. They want, the trappings of relative prosperity. We're not talking about huge prosperity, but they were, you have a house, a car, a secure job. So if you talk to them, but we need a revolution, they don't know what you're talking about. We need to destroy everything for that. I mean, the revolution, it worked. It works sometimes. The Bolsheviks seized power. They saw their moment and they seized it. I mean, no one else has been quite as successful as the Bolsheviks were. There was an opening. It's a very brief opening, but they had an opening and they took it. But elsewhere, they didn't, and they saw the social democracy, which kind of gradually people things improved. But the left, this academic left, as I say, the Marcuse, the Frankfurt School, and others, say, well, no, we want revolution. We can't just accept the system. And I think identity politics was born of that. That was the thing. Well, we'll forget all these old economic issues because that just leads us to boring old social democracy. Let's have a new revolution, identity, that you are oppressed.
Exactly. See, what happened was that the working class, if we look at the amazing economic growth in the Western world after the Second World War, all the way up until stagflation. Okay, unbelievable growth. I mean,
Right.
if anyone's interested in Mad Men, the TV series on,
Right,
I think
right.
it's Showtime, they document that. It's actually a very good series in that respect. Okay, because there was this unbridled belief in the future, and a lot of people benefited from it. Look, Don, the main character, I mean, he was, he's dirt poor. I mean, he was nobody. Actually had to change his name, reinvent himself, and he's on, Madison Avenue. Okay. And those are real stories. But George is absolutely right. It got to a certain point where the economic revolution was not deemed necessary.
Right.
So let's go identity. Okay.
Right,
And that's what they did. So the new working class, minorities. Okay.
Right, right.
Okay. The new oppressor, white people. It's not capitalism, it's white people. Okay.
That's right,
And that's
that's
what
right.
they've done. It's old bottles with new wine.
Yeah, no, that's it, and that's why they suddenly, they kind of abandoned the old model, which is a gradual prosperity, which was also the model that was thought to be applied for blacks as well. Yeah, you get jobs, and then you get more prosperous, and it was working. I mean, the unions, they were opened up to the unions, and the blacks were getting good jobs in the auto industry in the 1960s. And black prosperity was rising, but then with this whole new left, so you have to have this revolutionary consciousness, and you have a rebel by being black. So you're black, you're oppressed, and against they even had the young people were oppressed, homosexuals were oppressed, right, and so on. And so this was then this became this new mantra, and for a while the Democratic Party kind of kept its distance from them, but then that seems to be pretty much the sort of the dominant theme with the Democrats. So it really is like the ideas of the 60s have now become mainstream in America and elsewhere.
You have people, not only is it people live through it, but now it's lore, where you have the great, I was actually very, very young at the time, but there's the civil rights movement, and to a large degree, the anti-war movement against Vietnam. These are the causes, okay? Right. And so this ideology needs a cause to give it legitimacy, okay? And as we have an entire political elite that have forgotten about working people, middle-class people, and as George and I have chronicled here through our hundreds of videos right now, is that the Republicans actually have a lane open to them. Now, will they take it? It's unclear. Because Trump made attempts. How he wasn't always very articulate about it. I don't know how well he understood it, but he had an inkling there. I mean, and that's what the secret of the 2016 election is.
Right.
He actually spoke to people that haven't been spoken to for generations.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And so we have a question here from Boyan Perko, who says, why is Nixon blamed for everything? He did many good things that would get him labeled a communist these days. But he did start the corn syrup and everything disaster and so on. But what you raise is a very good question, because of course, Nixon was always hated, from his first year, beginning of his career in the House Un-American Activities Committees, when his famous cross-examination of Alger Hiss, and that which led to disaster for Hiss. And then, of course, he was the antagonist towards Jack Kennedy, and the liberals loved Kennedy. But yeah, the fact was that he enacted a very formidable agenda, but the Democrats didn't want to credit him. And so in 1973, he actually wanted pretty much to institute a kind of universal health care. And who opposed him? Teddy Kennedy. I mean, because the votes would have been there, but Teddy Kennedy, because he didn't want essentially Nixon to take the praise for it.
It's very simple, and it's very counterintuitive. The Nixon presidency was remarkably successful.
Very successful, yeah.
But it had a president that failed. See, that's what it is, okay? He failed, okay? Why? I mean, it is one of the great follies of political history. There was no reason for him to fail whatsoever. But he was a victim of his own insecurities, okay? Right. But as a presidency, very successful, okay?
Right, but through Watergate, the Democrats managed to essentially reverse a cataclysmic disaster for them in 72. I mean, remember, they had that huge victory in 64 with Johnson. 8 years later, the complete debacle, 49 state landslide for Nixon. But through Watergate, they managed to somehow reverse all of that. It was the Democrats are very skillful. They seize their opportunities.
That was politics, not policy. See,
Right.
they were
Yes,
able
that's
to
right.
make one superimpose one over the other. That's why there's such a blind spot. And let's face it, folks, most historians are liberal, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why Nixon will never get a fair hearing. Never get a fair hearing.
That's
okay?
right. And it's funny.
He made terrible mistakes, and he owned up to it, and he paid the ultimate price.
Right. No, that's right. It's very funny what you just said, because I remember it was about 1988. He was interviewed by Tom Brokaw, and then Brokaw asked him, like, well, how will historians look upon you? And he said, well, it depends. I mean, most historians are liberal, so they're probably going to look upon me negatively. But I
think it's on YouTube with that interview. What's really cool about that interview is that the tape is running the entire time. So when they go to a break, they have this little banter. And you see in Nixon, he's very much at ease. He's relaxed, he like the banter.
Right.
And then, when the camera comes back on, it was as usual. Okay.
Right.
Very interesting. Even as a person, Henry Kissinger once said that he found that Nixon was a very odd character, because for a politician and of his caliber, and he was a very successful politician. Obviously he was, but he just didn't like people.
No. I think that's right. He didn't have that quality, which most politicians, the glad handing, you're putting your arms around people. All of
Reagan
that.
could melt everybody.
That's it. Yeah. No, that's very true. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, Nixon was a very interesting character. In a way, Kissinger was very smart, but he wasn't really interesting. I mean, he was just, he was on the make. He was ambitious, and so on. He did whatever his bosses wanted him to do. Yeah, again, very, very bright man. But there's nothing unusual about him. I mean, Nixon was very unusual. I mean, he's, again, as I say, he very poor. I mean, I think that he was about the poorest, man who ever became president. He was very, very poor. Some of his siblings died in childbirth, and it was a really poor background. And he gets to the top, and then disaster. I mean, it's an amazing story. It really is like a tragedy, a Shakespearean tragedy. So.
Oliver Stone, he made that famous film Nixon, which I actually quite like. I had a girlfriend. She broke up with me because of that film, because she thought it was so boring. Okay, I thought it was good. But Oliver Stone, Nixon, and then the subtitle, "Greatness Within His Grasp." Yeah. Perfect subtitle.
Right. No, that's right. Yeah. I mean, I thought Anthony Hopkins, he kind of looked a little like Nixon, that he was having difficulty with the accent, which I was surprised at. I thought Hopkins could do better with the accent, but he couldn't get the American accent. So he never really, to me, he didn't really sound too much like Nixon.
The film was for political junkies.
Okay? Oh, I agree. I agree. And again, physically, they managed to make him look quite like Nixon. So I think that was No, look, I agree. It was an interesting film. But yeah, I think that's that's a very good point. Is that he had this greatness within his grasp, and then boom, he had this. But he himself said, I think he said it to David Frost, I gave them a sword.
And they stuck it in, and they twisted it with relish. That's the exact word. I mean, the interesting thing is that when Frost was arranging the interviews, Nixon had his lawyer or a representative. And David Frost was going through this intermediary to set up all these things. And so when he was being paid, Nixon is in the room. And so David Frost saying, so how do you spell your name to give it to the intermediary? And Nixon said, Richard M. Nixon. And he wrote it and he grabbed the check himself. His childhood never left him. Never left him.
No, that's right. It's when he gave that his farewell address to the White House staff, but the amazing thing is that he still kept it together. There were several times during that farewell you thought he's going to break down. He's not going to be able to keep it through. But
his mother.
when he started about his exactly, and he talked about his father, and he said he's not going to be able to see this through. He's going to just collapse. But he managed to do it, and you'd have to say that was quite impressive to be able to. I mean, this is after all, it was a terrible, terrible moment for him. I mean, and he was feeling sorry for himself, as anyone would be at that time, and he started talking about his father and his mother, but it was just impressive that he managed to keep it together.
It was pathetic also, because he was talking about don't let them don't return their hate and all of that. I mean, come on, Dick. I mean, you had your fair share of hating. Okay.
Oh yeah. No, but I think he was acknowledging that's what did him in. That if people hate you, don't hate them back, and because otherwise you will destroy yourself. So it was a kind of an acknowledgement, as to why things went so wrong for him.
Okay, I'm going to have to go in a couple of minutes here, but one thing a lot of people don't realize, and George and I lived through it, is before there was all this discussion about the tapes, Nixon could have legally taken all of those tapes, taken it to the Rose Garden and had a bonfire, and he could have gotten away with it. It was not illegal, okay? It was obviously his property, and there was nothing anyone could do about it, okay?
Right.
But why did he hang on to it? For legacy. He wanted a record of his legacy, okay? Again, his pride got the best of him.
Yes. I think if he could have done it at a very early stage. There was plenty of time in which to do it. Even when, remember, I mean, no one knew about the tapes, I think, until about July 73, when that guy Alexander Butterfield revealed it. So he had all that time. I mean, those months and months during which he could have destroyed the tapes. But even after Butterfield revealed the existence of the tape, he could still have destroyed them and said, "Yeah, it's my own property and executive privilege." I mean,
and there had been no request for them. Okay,
exactly.
I mean, you can't record. You'd say, "Well, they're gone." I mean, sorry.
Yeah, what are you going to do about it? No, and I mean, I'm sure the Democrats would have still moved to impeach him, but they wouldn't have succeeded.
Smoking gun.
Exactly. But look, the Democrats saw this as their opportunity. I mean, I think very early on in Watergate, Nixon knew the Democrats would impeach him. The question was that would he survive? Did he have enough Republican votes? And some of the Dixiecrat, the very, very conservative Democrats liked him, and they would have probably voted in his favor. So through most of it, 73 through 74, he still thought that he would survive. I think right up until that smoking gun tape, he still thought, I had the votes. I only need 34 votes. I have the 34 votes. But that smoking gun tape, everything just collapsed overnight.
Barry Goldwater walked from the Capitol to the White House. He walked. Right. And he was told, Nixon was told, Barry Goldwater's outside the office, and when Barry Goldwater said, "I can't back you," that's
right. Yeah, no, that's right. I think then, he told him there was the House Minority Leader, the Senate Minority Leader, and Barry Goldwater. They came to see him and they said, "You just don't have the votes. At the most, you might get 2-3 votes. They will convict you." Nixon was very pissed off about that. I think, he didn't just take it gracefully. I think he felt very upset that the Republicans abandoned him at that point.
When he lost in 64, and then he lost in 66 when he was running in California. What did he do?
He lost in 62 in California.
Sorry, 62, right, 62. What did he do? He had his one suit, and he went to he fundraised for any Republican that wanted it. You bet he felt resent because he helped all of them during those terrible wilderness years. He could have just worked for a law firm. He could have made some money. He had a Rolodex. He was vice president of the United States for 8 years, for God's sake. Okay. Right. Nixon had no reason to be resentful.
I think it's a very good point, because it goes back to 1964, when the entire kind of political establishment within the Republican Party abandoned Barry Goldwater. It was George Romney, Mitt's father, Nelson Rockefeller. They said, "We don't want to have anything to do with Goldwater. He may be the party's nominee. We will do nothing to help him. And Nixon was the only one who was part of the establishment who came forward at the Republican convention and said that I will support Goldwater and I will campaign for Goldwater. So for Goldwater then to turn around and do this to him, I think he felt very, very upset. And I think he made the very point you just made. I campaigned for a lot of guys over the years. And so I think he was very bitter about this.
A lot of rubber chickens.
Right.
Yeah. Apropos, and I'm going to have to end this because I have to take the dogs out. What was it? One other Republican that never criticized Nixon, even during the worst of days? Ronald Reagan. Okay,
that's very true. Yeah,
he never criticized it. He said, you know, that he said that was the 11th commandment: never criticize Republicans.
That's right. Yeah, you're absolutely right, because I don't remember Reagan ever criticizing him. You know, that's right. It was a loyalty. Yeah, but that shows you again. You know, irrespective. You know, we can put aside, you know, whether how bad what he did was. The Democrats would have absolutely supported their president. They would not have abandoned their leader.
Bill Clinton.
Exactly. They would have passed him. You know, if it would have been Johnson or any incumbent Democrat had been in the same position, he would have had the 34 votes to survive. And that just shows you again, the Republicans, they cave so quickly, you know, they get so intimidated. New York Times and the mainstream, you know, networks. Oh my God, what are they going to say about us?
The lion of the Senate. Well, the lion of the Senate killed a girl, okay, and they still stood by him.
Exactly.
Okay?
That's a very good analogy. Yeah, exactly. He killed a woman. He killed a woman, and he still ran. He ran for president in 1980. Just 11 years after that, he killed a woman. He was convicted by a court. I can't remember. Was it some charge? You know, recklessness or something. He was actually convicted. You know, he didn't entirely walk away unscathed. But the fact is, he didn't. You know, he knew this woman drowned, and he did nothing for hours afterwards. Instead, he consulted with all his political allies and asked, you know, what should I do? Instead of going to the police right away to see if we can rescue her, you know, he didn't do anything until the next morning after he talked to all the Arthur Schlesingers, all his pals, as to what do I do now? So for hours and hours, the woman was in that car suffocating. And he's still 11 years later, he runs for president.
Need we say more? I mean, the Democrats, they stick together.
They stick together. And not only that, you know, after he failed in 1980, and he did pretty well, incidentally, for challenging an incumbent president, he continued in the Senate for years and years until he died. I mean, you know, he didn't die until, I don't know, 2010, 2011. I can't remember when he died. So all those years he continued in the Senate. He was, oh yeah, the lion of the Senate, what a great guy, and so on. It's that's the Democrats. Very different, very, very different with the Republicans. All right, Peter. I think,
do we have any other questions?
Not really. No. You know, I think we're about we're about done. So thank you everybody who joined us. This is Saturday evenings, you know, this is how we want to spend our Saturday evenings with our friends. I hope you found it interesting. We had a lot of fun, and we will be here next Saturday at the same time. I hope to see you all then. So have a great week, and remember, if you like the Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you. Bye, buddy. Go for a nice walk.
All right.